There's a quote by Deavere Smith that says, "Friendship is a wildly underrated medication." I agree. Friendship is a medication that, if taken, can heal the most broken of them all. It's also something that, if avoided, can diminish the quality of our social life. Ultimately, it's a sweet gift from God that shows us an earthly depiction of what Christ looks like. So we need to do this wisely and carefully. How do we go about choosing our friends? All this and more. A new episode of the podcast starts now. What's up, guys, and welcome back to the New Mercies I See podcast, where we honor God in the daily living. I'm your host, Rochelle, and I'm happy to have you. If you're new, hey, hope that you are able to catch up on some older episodes, stay a while, become family, take off your jacket, sit down, got a cup of water for you. And if you're a seasoned listener, I want to thank you for giving me another listen. There's so many podcasts out there, and so I really appreciate that you're giving me some of your time. Y'all, first I want to say the audio on last podcast was pretty gainy, and I'm sorry about that. I'm doing my best to not be so loud. I feel like I'm just kind of like loud and proud, and so I'm hoping that we can kind of, and when I say we, I mean me, can kind of get the kicks out, if you will. So thank you. I am just coming from the doctor's office, and in a minute after I record this, I'm going back to go pick up my baby from school. So I'm trying to get this out for you guys. But I hope your week was well. I hope that you enjoyed yourself. Like I said, I'm just coming from the doctor's office, but this week was good. This Sunday we had dinner with Mom, and that was fun. You know, it's so funny because me, my mom, and my husband, we all love to yap. Like, you know, like those games where it's like you just have questions in a jar and you pull them out and you just start conversations and have them all night. That's our jam. So, we have dinner, of course. Hillary's kind of frolicking, playing in her Barbie house that Nana got her. But there were just so many topics in the room between the three of us, and we were just yapping all night, and it was just such a fun time. So that's what we did for Sunday. We also got Hillary's passport last week, which was so funny. Hillary has such personality, and she has the people cackling whenever we go anywhere. So she got her passport. We're traveling out of the country later this year, and I just kind of wanted to get all that kind of stuff out of the way. So took her to get her passport. She took her picture and everything. I was like, oh my gosh. And then, like I told y'all, she's going to kindergarten this year. So we finally were able to kind of like get her registered and everything. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. I could already tell I'm going to be that mom. I may or may not have already emailed them. Like, I like that teacher. Can she be in this class? Sickening. But yeah, but I hope that you have been well nonetheless. All right, y'all, before we get into things, housekeeping, you know the drill. Be sure to like, subscribe, download, and share this to someone that you think this can bless. This is how the podcast grows, and this is also how people hear good things, right? If you heard something good, wouldn't you want someone to hear it, right? Unless you were being stingy. Don't be stingy. Share the pod. All right. Okay, y'all. Last week we talked about discipleship and, why we should value it and how it equips us to live our lives in an edifying way. And I left you guys with some homework, right? Your homework was to find your people or take inventory to see if you even have it, to find your crew, right? So today we're going to talk about how to do that, and most specifically in the area of friendship. Now, every friendship is not necessarily going to turn into a discipleship relationship. This podcast is going to be more focused on friendship itself, but you may end up finding your Barnabas through this podcast on how you choose friends. Eventually that person may turn into someone that you guys can disciple each other or can disciple you. But we're talking about friendship specifically today. All right. So I grew up an only child. I do have a baby sister now, but for 21 years, I was an only child. You know, that has kind of made me very comfortable being alone. And in addition to that, my family dynamic is one where it's like we all love each other on both sides. It's like we all love each other, but we're not really communicators all around each other, having family reunions. Like that just wasn't my story and how I was raised, you know, like we kind of, some of us talk, you know, more frequently to one another, but more than likely it's always kind of like, I'll see you when I see you. You know, I love you. We'll catch up every couple of years, and it is what it is. And while that's great because it has allowed me to do that in my friendships, like, you know, not need to be around them 24/7 in order to feel connected. But it's also something that I felt crippled me. And I think I have other cousins that I talk to that feel the same way, right? It's made me always admire like sisterhood and friendship. But on the other hand, I feel like I was never really taught how to be a friend. Like I can, like, you know, if it's Thanksgiving, I know how to host, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you are walking with someone in friendship. Dropping off soup, you know, hospitality, you know, just calling and checking in, things that friends do. I wasn't used to that. And therefore, I never learned that. You know, unless it's like a crisis going on where I've seen it. But besides that, that just wasn't, I never really saw that in the home of just like what it looks like to be a friend per se. I've had people in my life. I have people in my life currently, you know, from childhood friends to college friends to church friends. My maid of honor and her and I, we've been friends since I was 5, and she's still in my life today. Actually, we both lived in New York together. That's how we met, on the same street. Both of our parents ended up moving down to Georgia, and we've kind of always lived about like 20 minutes or so apart. And so it's been good. It's been good. It's been good. And so, you know, friendship is something that, or at least Christ honoring friendship, at least has taught me, and we'll get into that a little bit later. It's taught me what a lack of siblings could not. And what that is just how amazing it can be. And also, like, if I cherish things, I need to value them and take care of them. You know, I've been the good friend, the friend that shows so much grace, the friend that pours into my other friends and is the change that I want to see, is motivating, is loving, and really just wants to see my friends win. That's something that I truly feel that the Lord has blessed me with. Just like, I feel like pride and jealousy, those aren't really things that I struggle with as it pertains to friendship. And I feel like that's a gift in itself. But I've also been the friend that has had opportunity for growth, especially when I was younger and didn't have, you know, the self-control that I have now, or the emotional intelligence that I have now, or the communication skills that I have now. I've experienced breakups, you know, I've cried over friendship breakups. You know, they always say like friendship breakups are like worse than a romantic breakups. Like I could lose my husband, but my friends, no. Well, you probably shouldn't think that way, but that's how it can feel, right? Friendships are just as equally as important. But ultimately, I value it so much. I value friendship a lot. And so I want to kind of just share some gems with you that you can take as you are growing up. You might be younger listening to this podcast and, you know, figuring out your friends for the first time. You might be older and maybe you're like your 30s or mid 30s. And it feels like once we get there, we just keep pruning. It's like we prune a lot in this year because we are really truly blossoming into who we are as women. And maybe this can be a blessing to you too if you're in that season of your life. So what does God say about friendship? You know, I was saying this to you guys last podcast that over the years we've become an extremely individualistic society, right? And I think that social media has played into that. Us feeling like we know each other, even though we don't, just because we can see each other socially. You're able to see more people than you ever have been able to, but you don't know them. And then, paired with the fact that we're always sharing our lives, it can create this false sense of like, oh, I know her. I saw what she did last week. She was just out at this restaurant or whatever. You can kind of trick yourself into thinking that you actually know a person when you've just seen them, right? And I think that social media has kind of slowly made us want to be perfectionists with influencers out there and, things, platforms becoming more of a platform than just, we used to post back in the day with a sepia filter and we used to go about our day. It was about what we were doing. And lately it's kind of turned into, it needs to be a photo shoot. It needs to be professional. And so, and again, me too. I'll be doing it too. I'll be like, you haven't posted till 6 months because the picture wasn't right. But listen, so me too. But in efforts to want to be perfectionists, we've lost the treat of being vulnerable and having true solid friendships in the process, right? We've kind of wanted to appear strong, for so long that our tools for friendship ended up being weak. And that's simply not God's plan for us. I believe that God doesn't want us to idolize friendship, which we will also talk about in a little bit. But I believe that He wants us to have community. Like I said last week, you cannot do this thing alone. Even if you're a non-believer, community is great, right? But how much more sweet is it when we have Christ at the center of that relationship? So there's many examples of friendship in the Bible, right? So, when David was being hunted by Saul and his friend comforted him, friends consoling one another through grief and loss and death, right? The Bible talks about a friend's rebuke being better than flattery. We don't like to hear that one. But like a good friend rebuking you and telling you, hey, you need to change something here. That being more weighty and more valuable than a million people flattering you, which I feel like is what we have now. We have a lot of yes people around us. We have a lot of people that we do things with, but they don't necessarily know us or care for us intimately enough to say, where you're going in life, I want good things for you, and this is how you get there, and it's not by what you're doing, right? We have the infamous friendship of David and Jonathan in the Bible, right? We also have examples of what not so good friendships look like or can do, right? We have Jonadab and Ammon with Tamar, right? So many examples, right? Like just how a friend can do the opposite of what we talked about last week. Like I gave the analogy of, being in an alley and your crew being able to save you or just basically fighting for you and praying with you and, helping you when you are being attacked. The opposite can happen when you have the wrong friends. You can be always being attacked. And even if that attack is not physically, it can be spiritually because you might have friends that are constantly taking you away from God slowly but surely. Ask me how I know, right? Bad company corrupts good character. We have so many examples. We need community. Humans should be relational, with mutual affection, But because of this, and because of what friendship truly requires, this is something that we need to do with wisdom and discernment, right? This is something that we can't just overlook. This is something that we can't choose in a way that doesn't take thought. So let's talk about how we choose our friends. So before we go there, I want to kind of talk to you guys about how we get there, like how we get to the point where we are selecting friends. And a lot of it has to do with our self-worth, what we think we deserve, what we value, what our standards are, who we submit to, right? If I can really think back and just retro it for myself, I can think of so many times where I've just wanted to belong, right? Again, like I said, being that only child and wanting sisterhood, there's a part of me that really idolized the term friend or best friend, right? I can think of the different periods of my life where I've had a best friend and how each time I've been disappointed. And each time it wrecked me because I thought that this person was going to be in my life forever. When I say forever, Delulu, right? Even though, like, sometimes that does happen. Like I said, I have my friendship right now that I've known since 5. And I pray that we last until we're old and gray. But now that I have a little bit more spiritual maturity and just a little bit more age and wisdom on my hands, I know that may not be the case, and sometimes that's just how it goes. But I've idolized that term best friend for a while, and I don't think that I'm the only one. I think you can say that you probably have as well, right? Looking to movies instead of Christ to what friendship should look like. Like I remember just watching TV, maybe Nickelodeon, I don't know, or just like seeing movies, and the girls, they'll just be having sleepovers and braiding each other's hair and like, jumping on the bed and like, everyone's cool with everyone's moms, and then you're all bridesmaids and like everything. And then you're old at a resort sipping a glass of wine, laughing about the good old days. And every time I went into a relationship, that's what I was looking for. And I just kind of locked in and invested. And even now I'm telling you, like, I'm meeting a new person and I have to like just slow it down. Because I'm always kind of just like, if I'm a good person and you're a good person, then let's be good together. And, that has its advantages because I'm able to be friendly and welcoming and opening and learn a new person, all the things, but it also has led to a lot of hurt for me, and a lot of lack of trust, and being heartbroken and just wondering why, right? And so, we're looking to movies and all of these things for how to pick our friends. And sometimes that means that we have unrealistic expectations. I know I've had them. Or maybe you don't have unrealistic expectations. Maybe you just are looking at the wrong picture of what the criteria of friendship should look like. Right? Instead of thinking of what God says friendship should be, you're thinking of what this movie are trying to mirror that, what they say that friendship should look like. So you're choosing friends, you're getting friends, and then you're finding that things are going wrong because the criteria is from the wrong source. So I'm going to have another let me hold your hand moment with this. Let me hold your hand when I say this. Some of you don't have good friends. You're just having a good time. And the quicker you realize that is the quicker you can find your people. This is something that I realized coming out of college, right? Like I think in college I was kind of like in the mix. I told you guys that I was a pretty frequent drinker, heavy drinker, functional, obviously, but college life. And so you're meeting these people, you're having fun with them, you're in a setting that you probably will never be in for the rest of your life, where you are all the same age, all have the same kind of goal, which is a degree, and all are kind of doing life while you're doing that. Also while growing into older women and older men. A lot of things in common here. And so, when you're kind of like having fun and like going to the local restaurant that everyone goes to or the party or whatever, you can, again, have this false sense of camaraderie that isn't really real. You graduate and you can't really think of who you would actually invite, who you would actually introduce to your parents, who you would actually have over, if it wasn't a social gathering setting, right? And I noticed that in college. And then what made it even more cemented was when we left college and I started to see people doing the exact same thing. Oh, let's go to brunch. And everybody's like going to brunch and they're having like bottomless mimosas. No judgment. They're having bottomless mimosas and they all feel like they are like brother and sister. And it's like, you don't know anything about this person. They've never walked alongside you ever. You guys have just shared a good mimosa. You had a good time, right? Your morals are not aligned. We're not even thinking to ask, am I equally yoked with this person? Are we on the same path? We don't have to be clones of one another, but is our walk, not so different, where our friendship isn't really logical or rational, right? I have done this. I was just talking to my therapist the other day, and I was just kind of, downloading to her some things about friendships, and and my therapist literally looked at me and was just like, "Why were you even here? Like, why were you here?" And so, that's something that I just want to just stress. Sometimes you don't have a good friend. You're having a good time. And good times are great, right? We thank God for good times. Everybody doesn't need to be your friend. You can have a great time with someone and you guys not need to be connected in that way. But I think a lot of us, the percentage of good time versus good friends, the good time is like 90% and the good friends are like 10. And good friends come, it's like a needle in a haystack. But you don't get to those good friends if the numbers game that you are existing in constantly has you around good times and never gives opportunity for someone to become a good friend to you. I hope that makes sense. Your morals on the line, but you both are foodies. So you are like, that's my friend. It's like, no, y'all just like food, baby. You just like food. It's like, here, like, on Christ the solid rock I stand. All other ground is sinking sand. All other ground is sinking sand. And it's like something happens to show you that the sand is sinking and everybody unravels because the foundation wasn't there. Right? You guys don't submit to the same God. So how can they be a good friend to you? Make it make sense. Of course they talk to you like they're crazy or like you are not a child of God when they're upset because they lack self-control and they don't care to strengthen their muscle in it because they don't care about bearing fruit unto the Lord. Of course, they have to be right all the time and have the last word because their identity is in being right and not in Christ. Of course, you don't understand why they wouldn't apologize to you because they're paralyzed by their pride. And you are able to be free because you're not a slave to your sin. Of course, when you're struggling with something, they can't do anything for you. Of course, they cannot pray for you because they don't pray for themselves. God is good. God is great. Let us thank you for our food. That's as far as it goes. They don't know anything about intercession, and you're expecting them to intercede for you. But they'll get you on a mimosa, though. Y'all can have a great meal together. And this is what I'm saying. It's like I said, we are having good times. We don't necessarily have good friends. Another thing that I thought about is parenting. You want to see where you and a person stand in regards to friendship? Have a baby. Because when we become parents, we automatically start to think of things bigger than us. We want to raise our children to be what we feel we didn't have, what we feel will set them up for success, what we feel like a good civilian in this world will look like. And if you didn't see it with yourself, if you didn't see that person was just a good time by yourself, you're going to see it when you raise your child and when that person raises theirs. And again, this is not to say that we cannot be friends with non-believers, because I think that there needs to be a conversation about believers that do that. Some believers are so self-righteous and they're using Christianity as a way to be like, I'm better than you. It's like almost like Christian classism. And so they say that they're trying to be wise, but what they're really trying to do is have an elevated status. A bunch of non-believers, sometimes you hear the way Christians talk about non-believers, and they talk about them as if they're someone that God didn't create in his image. So I'm not saying we can't be friends with non-believers. I'm friends with non-believers. I won't stop being friends with non-believers, right? You pray that they come to the faith, but if they don't and they are good people, why not? Additionally, who are you going to minister to? Your believing friends that already believe? So, I'm not saying that we can't be friends with non-believers, but I am saying that there's levels to friendship. And the people that should be like in our close circle, require more than just a good time. So, levels to friendship. You have your outer circle, associates, people that you are cordial with. Y'all, I wanted to let you know that cordial used to have me in a chokehold. I used to be like, I don't have to speak. I can be kind and smile, but I don't get it. The small talk, I don't get it. The New Yorker in me, child. But with growth, I've learned that you can be cordial to all, but connected to a few. And so you have your associates, your people that you may go to events with. You don't really know them, but you guys have a common interest, maybe a common sport, maybe a common thing you're learning together, right? But those people don't necessarily get to know the ins and outs of you. They may not be invited to the crib, right? You have your friends. You have friends that you would invite to your home. You would go check on them. You would go visit them. You would go see how they're doing. You would really care about them. Really want to share things with them on a more personal level than just your social persona or you at dinner when you're talking about surface level things, right? Then you have your close friends. Close friends, people that you would really tell something serious. People that if you did something that was not favorable, you would feel comforted resting in them with that information. And so sometimes we are telling associates information that only close friends should have. And sometimes we're doing the opposite. We are treating close friends like they are associates and we're not pouring into them enough. This is something that this is the side I fall on, where like I can like, to protect my heart and just a lack of being intentional. I can be that person who doesn't reach out, and I've grown in that area so much, right? And it's also good to have like friends that are as intentional as you. So if you don't like reach out to them, they're reaching out to you saying, "Hey girl, what's up?" So, yeah. And so when it comes to choosing our friends, everybody doesn't fit in every category. And when we mix this up, our wisdom and discernment takes a hit, and we end up choosing the wrong people in our lives. So when it comes to choosing friendships, how do we choose them? What are we looking for? It's not the girl that's pretty. It's not the person who is popular and into all the things. It's not the socialite. It's the person that is bearing fruit. It's the person that is kind, is loving. It's the person that gives you the benefit of the doubt, thinks good things. It's the friend that's long suffering and that can bear the test of time, stand the test of time. It's the friend where if you look up the fruits of the Spirit in the Bible, you see qualities of them, right? And so this is what we need to be looking for when we're choosing friends, and not just what looks cool. So when we find these friends, now we need to, when we find these people that we're thinking, okay, I would like to be a friend. So one thing I do is I'm going to observe you, baby. Like, I see people doing what I was talking about earlier. They meet people, they immediately pour in, and because there's no foundation, it breaks easily, the relationship. I do the opposite. I observe for a good little minute. I know what I'm looking for, that fruit. And once I feel like, okay, I think I've done enough to where I think this would be a good person, I kind of need you to get my hands dirty and do life with them to see if I'm right. But they've passed like the preliminary test. I reach out to them, or sometimes it happens the opposite way, and then I meet up with them and I take it one day at a time. After you find the person that you're like, okay, I like her, how you make a friend is to be a friend. I think a lot of times we talk a lot about how people are pouring into us and what they can be doing for us, but we haven't taken the time to strengthen our friendship skills, myself included. I think of so many times when I've had issues in friendship, because I think that that's normal, right? I want to also say that, like, you need friendships that aren't afraid to have something go wrong and you guys fix it together because you love one another. But to my point, I can think of times where I've had issues with friends and they had so many complaints, not so many, but like they had complaints with me. And in my mind, I'm just like, you are totally oblivious to all the complaints that I could have about you, but I chose to show you grace, right? So, like I said, a lot of times we are focused on what people are doing for us, that we're not focusing on what we're doing as friends. And so that's important. So to get a friend, you be a friend. You're constantly working on yourself. You are constantly being friendly and being open and available, transparent. And then also, each friend is different. So you are studying your friend. Get to know them. Seek them. Right? It's not the same relationship as God, but seek them like you're seeking the Lord. Get to know them. Be intentional. One of the things that makes friendship easier to do is when you're in close proximity to them. Meet up when it's uncomfortable, and it doesn't have to be dinner. We've turned friendship into like, let's get cute and go to a restaurant. You can't cry when you're at a restaurant because that would make a scene. You can't be your full silly self and make memories at the restaurant because it's not the time for that. We are put together. You guys need to be hanging out, doing more regular things. Go to the park. Let them come over. Seeing you in your natural habitat and how you do things. We have to invest intentionally, and that's how friendships will grow. So maybe you're listening to this and you're like, I hear you. I'd love to have, a better quality of where friendship is concerned. And maybe you're saying, like, I have some friendships in my life that I need to end, or at least just shift a bit. Maybe you need to demote a friend, right? From close friend to an associate or something, right? How do we go about doing that? Because now, hear me out. I am someone that's like, if you can reconcile, please do. that's where my heart usually like falls. Like it's that movie in me, it's that movie girl in me. Like I feel like friends should be able to stand to the test of time, and then you get older and you're just like laughing about the good old days. So if you can reconcile, do it. I also think that, as Christians, we talk a lot about forgiveness, but we don't talk a lot about reconciliation. And sometimes we use forgiveness as a crutch to be like, oh, I forgave you and forgiveness was for me. And now that I've forgiven you, I don't got to talk to you ever again. Right? And sometimes I think that God always wants us to go deeper. Like God always, in the Bible, he shows us so many pictures of how he wants us to take it a step further than the world would. So, he's like, oh, okay, the world would consider adultery like an egregious sin, right? Most people would. But God is saying, even if you lust, so check your mental, not even your actions, check your mental, right? And so I think that, in my opinion, I feel like, a lot of times we half do it when we say, oh, yeah, I'm going to forgive them. And then we cut them off. It's like we're still punishing them by never talking to them ever again. And part of it, based on the offense, is wisdom, right? They may not be able to be back into the fold the way they once were without time and just building that trust again or whatever. But sometimes the offense is not that big of a deal. And just because something didn't go favorable, we've decided to cut them off, as opposed to being a godly example of what reconciliation looks like and moving forward with them in love. So, before you end your friendship, ask yourself if you feel like it can be reconciled. And if you do that. Right? But if you've looked and you've taken inventory and you're just like, this just isn't for me anymore. I've done that. I don't do it often, but when I do it, I feel at peace about it. If you've decided that that is what you want to do, and you've talked about it with someone and you've gotten, an extra opinion, or you just really feel you can honestly say, I'm not being prideful here. Our season has just ended and we don't need to be in each other's lives as closely anymore. Then you want to make sure that you do it with grace, right? Sometimes that looks like honoring your friend enough to have a transparent conversation with them and let them know things have changed and this is how I feel. Sometimes that means assessing the situation, and if the temperature is too hot, slowly kind of decreasing contact. I also think it means being proactive, finding the people that you're looking for. And over time, as you find more people that fit where you're trying to go, you're going to want to hang out with them more. So the other friendships that you have that may not be as aligned, they will slowly start to fade. But my point here is that we want to make sure that we do it with grace. It's easy to get on here and be like, oh, me good, them bad, and use that as an excuse to treat them poorly, even when they've treated you poorly. Show them grace and mercy anyway, right? And also remember that people are always looking to talk about how you ruined your witness. The last thing I want to talk about before we wrap up is how to heal, right? Friendships are things that when the season ends, whether it be like a horrible friendship breakup or sometimes even worse, like there not being any beef, both parties just really understanding that our time has ended, that can come with heartbreak. I know it does for me. I'm not too prideful to admit that. Every friendship that I've had that I've been super close to that has ended has grieved my heart. And so, how do we heal when those things happen? The first thing is that you have to understand that the only person that will never leave or forsake us is Christ. And so, that's not something that you want to hear, but it's the truth. I think when we let our expectations, when we lower them a little bit, we're not as surprised when people fail us. And I think that's where I am now. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Maybe I'm callous. Maybe I'm kind of just like, I don't trust anyone, so whatever. And I should probably change that if that, But there also is a little bit of reality in that, where it's just like, man is going to fail you every time. There's going to be an opportunity to reconcile, and man is going to choose what makes him comfortable every time. There's going to be an opportunity to apologize, and man is going to take the opportunity to just hold on to their pride every time, just because they're not God. And so how do we heal? 1, we know that. 2, we talk about it. To your other friends in a way that is not slanderous or gossiping, but sharing. I choose to do that like with my therapist. So that, you get it out in a way with a professional, so you don't feel like you're like sharing horrible things about someone. And you seek wise counsel to help guide you in a better way. And then you keep it moving. You keep it pushing. You continue to find those relationships that allow you to live life in an edifying way. And over time, you will understand that what happened was God's plan. Sometimes things end and they look horrible, but it's just a part of the process of God. Like, you need that friendship breakup so that your spiritual maturity can grow and you can stop idolizing it. You needed to be treated that way so that you can know that this is not how to respond. And when you respond gracefully, you needed that moment so you can see the fruit that you are bearing in your own walk of sanctification. So take inventory. See what the lessons are for you to learn when things like that happen, and move forward in love, being better than you were the day before. All right, y'all. We're going to wrap. Your new mercy for the week. What I want you to open your eyes to is just the fact that friendship is not something that we should take lightly. Friendship is something that we should handle with care. And friendship is something that, when done right, brings us closer to Christ. So what I want you to do this week is I want you to find 3 friends that you feel are aligned with you or that are bringing you closer to Christ. And I want you to reach out to them. If you haven't done it in a while, do so. Try to meet up with them. Try to start the process of having a deeper and deeper foundation. And when you reach out to them, ask them how you can pray for them and give them something that they can pray for you for. All right, y'all. I will holler at you guys at the next one. See you soon. Bye.